Hello, and welcome to Tales for Life. In each episode of this podcast, we'll explore a folk or fairy tale from a different culture or region and discover the life lessons, values, and morals they offer that we can use today. Join me on the journey through the magical and meaningful world of folk and fairy tales. Welcome to another episode of Tales for Life, the podcast that journeys through life one tale at a time. I'm glad you're here today for a story that's playful, surprising, and full of heart. This one comes from old Spain, and like all the best tales, it carries a message that's as true today as it was long ago. Today's episode is titled, A Positive Attitude Leads to Positive Outcomes. We're often told to stay positive, and most of us genuinely want to. But in the rush of everyday life, it's easy to forget why that matters, or how to do it. When things feel heavy or unfair, we start imagining that life would be better if we were someone else, somewhere else, doing something entirely different. We compare, we envy, we wish. And in doing so, we miss the quiet truth. Life is hard for everyone, just in different ways. The weight we carry may not look like someone else's, but it presses just the same. And sometimes the very thing we think will set us free turns out to be another kind of burden. That's why attitude matters. Not as a slogan, but as a way of seeing, a way of being. The story you're about to hear is a perfect reminder of that. It's funny, a little wild, and deeply human. It shows us that the outcome of our day, or even our whole life, isn't determined by who we are or what we're doing, but by the attitude we bring to it. Whether we're carrying burdens or being carried, what matters most is how we choose to respond. Let's dive into The Enchanted Mule. Once upon a time in Spain, there lived a poor stableman named Pedro who worked at a roadside inn. One day, an archbishop arrived, riding a splendid mule adorned with scarlet cloth and golden harness. His attendants helped him dismount, and he turned to Pedro. "Care for my mule tonight," he said. "Tomorrow I continue my journey." Pedro gave the mule the finest stall, fed it generously, and admired its luxurious life. "Look at this creature," he muttered, "dressed in finery, well-fed, while I wear rags and live with my scolding wife. I'd gladly trade places with him." To Pedro's astonishment, the mule turned and spoke. "You would? My master is heavy, and my days are long. But if you truly wish it, grab my ears, and you shall be me." Pedro did so, and in a flash, he was the mule. The former mule, now in Pedro's body, trotted off joyfully. Pedro tried to call after him, but could only bray. He thought to say goodbye to his wife and mother, but was tied to the stall. When the archbishop came for his mule, his men found Pedro instead. As they tightened the saddle, Pedro bolted, galloping toward home. The archbishop's men gave chase, shouting, "Stop the beast!" Pedro reached his house, where his deaf mother sat spinning. He tried to take her hand, but his braying terrified her. She struck him with her distaff. His wife appeared and threw water at him. The crowd watched as Pedro tried to sit in his old chair, but was driven out and beaten until he returned to the inn. The archbishop mounted him, but Pedro's clumsy gait made the man bounce like a ship in stormy seas. As they passed through a village, the archbishop stood in the stirrups to steady himself. The villagers, thinking he was about to preach, knelt for a blessing. Confused, Pedro sat abruptly, sending the archbishop tumbling to the ground. Ashamed, Pedro knelt to beg forgiveness. "Look," cried a villager, "the mule repents." The archbishop, wary but touched, remounted. Pedro tried to make up for lost time, but his quick pace only worsened the ride. At the city gate, priest came to greet the archbishop, one holding a silver cross. At the sight of it, Pedro remembered his mother's teachings and knelt reverently. The sudden motion nearly launched the archbishop into the air. His hands, which had been on the shoulders of his servants, made a wild grasp and caught them by the hair. In their fright, they struck out right and left, and with their blows nearly stunned the archbishop. Angered, Pedro chased the servants, biting and braying until they fled into a chapel. "The archbishop's mule must be possessed," cried a priest. Pedro had time now to think about his mistake. "Ah," he mused, "I would gladly take any punishment if only I could have my former shape again. If my wife had been right all the time she called me a donkey, I should have made a good mule. But it has been far otherwise." Just then, the former mule, now Pedro, returned, looking miserable. "How do you like being a mule?" he asked. "I've had enough," Pedro replied. "Let's change back." "Yes," said the groom, "I could never live with your wife." "She's not so bad when you're used to her," Pedro said, "and I'm willing." "Hurry," said the groom, "I hear her knocking." He grabbed Pedro's ears, and in a blink they returned to their true selves. Pedro greeted his wife gently, and her anger softened. From that day, he never spoke harshly again, and peace returned to their home. The archbishop, shaken, sold the mule to the innkeeper for a pittance. Pedro became its groom once more, treating it kindly and speaking to it often. It never answered, but Pedro was sure this was because it was content in being what it was and wanted no more of changing shapes. Even in this shortened version of the tale, we get to laugh while being reminded of some serious truths. The story is playful, yes, but beneath the brain and the bustle, there's a quiet wisdom that lingers. At the start, both Pedro and the mule were discontent. Each believed the other had it easier, and that a change in circumstance would bring happiness. But when they traded places, nothing improved. In fact, things got worse. That's not to say we shouldn't strive to better our lives, but it's a gentle reminder that unhappiness often stems more from our attitude than our situation. And when Pedro and the mule returned to their original roles, something had shifted. Their circumstances hadn't changed, but their outlook had. The mule was content. Pedro was grateful. And that change in Pedro didn't just affect him, it softened his wife and transformed their home into a place of peace. So as you head into your week, may this story stay with you. May it remind you that while we can't always control what life hands us, we can choose how we receive it. And sometimes that choice makes all the difference. Thanks for joining me for this episode of Tales for Life. I hope you'll tune in next time when we'll explore another story that speaks to the heart and nudges us toward wisdom, one tale at a time.